supposed to be. But there is always a trade-off, because once one person becomes more powerful, they have to bring down another person. For some reason, that is the way of humanity. That once one person becomes powerful, and once one person becomes equal to another, they feel as if they have to devolve another class instead of staying equal. Or that we need to keep getting bigger and better and bigger and better until it all seems to crash down.
What did you say about your generation earlier? When I was talking about pictures and not having...
Well...
Plain paper pictures, it's all on selfie phones and stuff.
Yes, I mean, I am quite disappointed in my generation, because for all of our social revolution, all of our advancements in equality, and it seems like we get less and less equal every day, and for all of our evolution in electronics and everything else, for all of our evolution and build-up and bigger and bigger and better and better, it will all crash down. And for all of our evolution, we seem to devolve. Every time we evolve, we devolve in some other way. And it quite does seem like as soon as somebody invents something, it's now it is not like it was, I don't think. Or at least I don't think it ever has been that way, which is unfortunate because it should have been from day one. The fact that if there is the fact that it is always out with the old and with the new. The fact that the old cannot stay with the new. That the new has to become the new normal.
It's
and
popular.
It's more popular. That the newest trend, or newest this, or newest that, the newest life, the newest tech, the newest whatever. If you have the old version of life itself, if you're living the way that somebody else did in a past generation, you seem to be almost looked down upon because there's a new way of doing things. The very fact that the old cannot coexist with the new, a new lifestyle cannot coexist with an old lifestyle, and instead must be presented as the optimal way to go forth, devolves our society more than it evolves our society. Because as much as we're new, as much as everything becomes new and everything becomes better, you can't say that everybody has to get on board with something, with the next form, the newest this, the next that. Everyone needs to go at their own pace, and everyone needs to be their own person. You can't just get on board with trend, life, whatever, and just because everyone else says, well, this is new, this is how things are now, so you should do it too. If you want to be your own person, you should be able to be your own person. And the thing is that when people be their own person and they are new, it is an unfortunate truth that some or even most people will try to be their own person and then attempt to force their new person onto another person. And the people who are forced and do let up and evolve while not wanting to, create another ripple where another person is almost peer pressured into change, or something like that. Whereas every person should be their own person, and equality should happen, but it doesn't. If everyone wants to be their own person, no matter who they are, or what they are, as in their technology, you know, I don't even know. Like, there are so many forms where you can, so many words you could put in there. Just a moment.
Retrospect?
In substitution for technology, there are so many words that you could use as substitute. the old should not be referred to as the bad.
No, it's something that we should learn from.
Learn from. Although the old may have had some bad things, that doesn't mean that the new...
Well, they had to learn from the one before that.
Yes.
You have to learn from mistakes as well as growth.
And sometimes mistakes carry on through the generations. And unfortunately, that doesn't mean that the newest thing, or the newest trend, or the newest this, or the newest that, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be without mistake, that the next thing is going to be perfect, because nothing ever is. Nothing and no one ever is perfect. We must be able to learn from the new and combine it. You must be able to learn from the old and combine it with the new.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just cast out what used to be,
right,
and then expect everyone to go with the new. You must cast out the mistakes that the old has formed, but you cannot cast all of it. That would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I believe, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
So we must be able to be equal as a society to what has existed and what will exist. Otherwise, our society will devolve into chaos once more. We have to be equal. And I know that's what people have been saying for the past decades, generations.
You mean on the same page?
Yes, back to the 30s and 40s with Gandhi and everything. And nobody's ever listened. But now is a pivotal time. Now is a pivotal point in our society, and now is a pivotal point in the future of Earth itself as the human race. Not as an individual person, or an individual race, or an individual gender, or an individual... As a human. Part of the human community. We must make changes as a human community in order to make sure that we do stay equal to everyone. And it doesn't matter how old or whatever. Everyone must be heard, and everyone must be considered a human as humans.
To move forward.
And to ensure the future of the globe. Because if people consider someone else, no matter who they are, to be lesser, to think that somebody cannot change, or to force somebody to change, as long as there are people who do that, who force their views onto somebody else, or who look down upon somebody with different views. Granted, of course, those views aren't, bad. I mean, there's a clear exception to people. There's a clear exception to some people who, I mean, I think that's, just a moment.
Say there's a clear exception for certain things.
For certain things, I mean.
Yeah, I'm glad that you.
Yeah, I have to put a disclaimer
on that. Yeah.
That what I mean by allowing everybody to be. Oh boy, I'm losing my speech abilities. What I mean by I do have to put a disclaimer that what I mean by saying everyone, and that everybody's views should be respected. Some people's views cannot be. I mean, if somebody is a genuine, Nazi or something, we can't have that. That is an exception. Because people who don't have that kind of view, who aren't a genuine person, aren't really a person. There is the human community, a community of people believing that we all must be one species, because we are one species. But there are people who sow discontent, in whatever small way, and those people really aren't a member of the human community, and they don't really think of themselves as that way.
Emotionless.
Emotionless, apathetic, indecent.
Mm-hmm.
There is a war to wage, and it's a war for peace. A true war for peace, and it is a war against indecent people, whoever they are, and it does not matter who these people are. If they are indecent, they must be treated as indecent. But the rest of humanity, who is human, who do accept equality, who do accept people for being people, and people as one we are, must unite. I mean, it doesn't matter where you come from, who you are, but we are all people. And
I mean, I don't think anyone can disagree with that.
For decades, people have been trying, but now is the time.
Yeah.
Now is the time. Now is the only time. Now is our
problem
last.
Is with ideology where you're going to say this isn't acceptable, and there's other society, there's a portion of society that says, but yes, we think it is, and we want to be accepted as it is, you know. And this is the and I don't mean to take over your thing here, but you're one step away from basically my ideology of being a libertarian, because
Okay, don't force politics into it, because this isn't politics.
The thing, because it's not
It's
really.
not
It's
about
just
politics.
it's not, but it's a philosophy, which is if somebody is not hurting someone else, then they should be free to do what they choose, and that plays in, I think, to the point you're trying to make.
If somebody is not hurting, if a person is not an indecent person, I'm sorry, I must have some things in my teeth now.
No, you're fine.
If a person is not an indecent person, then they are a person, and we need to treat them as such. Now, as I was saying, now is the pivotal time. Now is the only time, the last chance that we must happen, because right now, the Earth, the globe, and the human race as a species sits on a nice edge. One, if we do not decide to move forward as a species and continue separate as different and grouped into different societies and different places where we cannot be considered one, if we continue to be divided into different communities that do not accept other communities as some, at that point, that is where things devolve. That is where things devolve into chaos. Chaos, war, death, and, unfortunately, destruction. But the other edge that we are at this tipping point on is so much better. And we need to work towards that edge now. And that edge now, the only way we can get there is by equality and by stopping global warming and by stopping these problems, because they are easily fixable. It doesn't matter what anybody's talking about and saying in these high places that I don't know, all these massive problems aren't fixable, because anyone with a logical and solid brain can pretty much figure out how to stop them. We just need to start working on it. We need to stop being lazy, hypocritical, procrastinatory governments, and we need to start working towards being.
Can I offer
Unity.
Unity, and the easiest solution is unity. And there are easy solutions to these problems that we consider massive, but we don't seem to be doing anything, and we must start doing things.
Especially for environmental.
Climate, human, everything.
Can I offer a...
And if we can... Just a moment. I want to finish this one piece. And if we can start tipping And if we can start tipping the globe towards that, then we tip ourselves away from war and chaos and destruction. We tip ourselves toward a green earth where everyone is treated as a person if they are a person.
And not a number.
And not a number. They are people, and we are people. Everyone. And we must, and if we can get there, if we can tip ourselves toward that, it will be wonderful. But now is the chance, now is the time, there is only now. This is our last shot. We've had it over the decades. We've had a 1 chance, 2 chances, 3 chances, 4 chances. We've had at least 7 strikes. By now it almost seems like the wait, is it?
I think
in baseball?
The Empire?
Umpire, sorry.
Umpire.
Umpire.
Oh boy, we're not a sports,
We're not sports.
family.
But then again, we should be accepted as human even if we don't agree with sports.
Right, I think
you see, because then
it's not agreeing. It's just that we have other,
just because we don't watch sports. Because then again, there's people with adrenaline and stuff that would say, "Oh, you don't watch sports." Well, I'm a member of this sports community, and since you root for a different team or something, you're my opponent, my enemy, and that can't go on.
Yeah, I mean, usually that is all lighthearted,
it's lighthearted
for the most part,
competition, yes.
You were looking for the word usher?
I was looking for
umpire.
I was looking for umpire. By now, I feel like the umpire would have struck us out. And I think out of all of these times, we've had 1 strikes, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, from Gandhi to Lenin and Lenin. I think, yeah.
Oh, John Lennon.
Yes.
John Lennon. Can I offer?
I was not done.
Okay.
Thank you. I apologize. I will let you speak your turn. From then until now, this is our last shot. Because I see the way the world is turning. I see the politics. I see Russia on their borders with Ukraine, ready to bully another nation into submission just because they're different. And they want to be someone different. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, but even so forth is even more.
Just do you really think it's because they're different, or do they want their resources?
They want the resources in the land, but that doesn't mean they're going to not going to brutally oppress the people just because they're a different nation.
Yeah. Right.
We are on the tipping point. I do see the way the wind is blowing, and there are 2 ways: discontent and destruction, or unity. And we need to tip ourselves towards unity, and it's easier than you think. We just need to get off our butts and do something about it. Even in the smallest way possible, if everyone just does something. If everyone unites to do something, we can do something. Now, I know you wanted to speak for a moment, but...
Okay.
Well, I just have a viewpoint, because, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying.
Yes.
Don't
make it about politics, though, because politics, again, is one of the points that I was talking about.
I'd rather have a different file, if that's okay.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
All right.
Go.
So I was just going to offer something on the global warming, because since I've been pretty young, not as young as you, but, I was a teenager, and I was very concerned about, global warming.
Yes.
And, basically, like, I've been on the Earth 40 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think nothing is being done, and ironically...
There are things being done, but it's not enough, because it still is shifting. If you look at Antarctica right now, it's still melting.
It is.
Just because there are things being done doesn't mean that they're big enough to do something.
Okay, well, now there's...
Little steps.
There's plenty of evidence and theory out there that what we're doing is making a very little impact on what the Earth is going to do anyhow.
That's another point of view.
That doesn't mean we can't change.
Absolutely. But what I was going to say was, because you said we haven't been doing anything.
We set the ticking time bomb in motion. Even if the Earth is now changing because it's changing, we were the reasons for that change.
There's
and we
plenty
can
of factories out
diffuse
there
it.
that need to be
That doesn't mean, just
and go
because the
green.
Earth is changing by itself, doesn't mean we were the ones who told it. Doesn't mean we weren't the ones who told it to change.
Or
just
rushed it to change.
But just try to because look, it is sold by politicians in a big way to create funds and to line their pockets, and that is just the reality of it. But the global warming
well, that might be
hysteria.
separate from what actually is going on.
And I am trying to yes, exactly, clarify that.
I'm not making this about conspiracies.
It's not about that's not a conspiracy. That's, I mean, you have to look at all angles. And
he's looking at it
I am looking at all angles.
raw form and what he's seeing.
I am looking at this from all angles.
All I wanted to say, I haven't said, all I wanted to say was we are moving, we are doing something, and ironically, it's a lot of the companies that get, and I'm not sticking up for the oil companies here, okay? I'm not, and the main reason I'm not is not because of who they are or what they do or whatever. It's because they get subsidized from the government and
to go do what they do.
And to go do what they do, and it's BS, you know. But having put that aside, they are in the works, I know, of doing things to change their operations, you know. And it might appear slow, but, you know, you have to, I mean, you can't flip something like that.
Here's the thing. A YouTuber, Mr. Beast, I'm sure almost everyone on the internet knows this, but at least anyone keeping up with the times on the internet, but let me reiterate for people that don't. A YouTuber named Mr. Beast, a social media influencer, he planted 1 million trees. Mm-hmm. And that was incredible. But here's the thing. That's not enough.
We need more.
We need even more, because the amount of trees being cut down even every
day.
Second.
Yeah.
There are there's about 1 million trees cut. I would estimate that there's 1 million trees cut down almost every, I don't know, let's estimate it at about 4 months.
Yes.
So we saved 4 months worth of trees.
Yeah, I get it.
We need to save like 70 years worth of trees.
And not touching the older trees.
And trees don't grow as fast as we need them to.
Exactly.
And the plastic that we use and that ends up in the ocean, it's a huge problem. It is huge.
I'm glad you're seeing that.
Yes, but just understand this, because I do see that.
Alternate supplies and materials to build things.
Do you know there's a place in the ocean?
It's Garbage Island.
Garbage Island.
Yes, I know.
Garbage Island.
Yeah.
There's literally an island
of garbage.
Pretty much, I believe, I'm not sure, I might be making this up, so don't quote me on this, but I believe you might even be able to see it from Google Maps. But
which is crazy.
Island.
Now.
Made of complete plastic. Floating in the ocean.
Right. I know. It's terrible. It's terrible. Now, I mean, I think that even with all its issues, capitalism is going to be the thing, the ideology that I think solves this ultimately, because there is money to be made in finding out a solution.
Now, yes, there is. Now, yes, that is politics. But I will say this: I will agree, because let's look at 4 main ideologies. Well, actually, no. Yes, but actually, no. Meme for the younger kids out there. A joke for the younger kids out there. Let's take a look at the 4 main ideologies, and the 4 main ideologies, which should be one, by the way, because we all should be human, and I suppose promoting unity at this level could be viewed as socialist, but yeah, but I mean, it's not like it can't. Every ideology, each four that I'm going to talk about, whether I'm going to talk about them at a large rate or a small rate, advertises their rights, not their rights, but advertises the way that they are right. And in a way, the ways that they are right. They exist. That is good.
If they could actually be carried out.
If they could actually be carried out, and they don't do that. Right. Nobody does that. Not one ideology, I think, has ever really done what they promised to do.
No,
and they
perfect.
Could.
Yeah.
Their potential is there to do something good with it. It's just that everyone has gotten corrupted, and it doesn't matter and the ideals that the ideology comes with always seem to end up corrupted by whoever's in charge. Now I'm going to talk about the four main ideologies.
Because we're human and we're flawed, and all the humans. I mean,
that is what I was. Yes, that's what I was talking about during the first video. That we need to stop being so flawed, and that we need to stop doing that.
Yeah.
That we need to start working towards our ideals that we've agreed upon.
Right.
We need to agree upon those ideals and then carry out the ideals. Because agreeing upon the ideals. Agreeing on something that we should do does not mean that it is done.
Right.
Agreeing on something that we should do does not change things. We need to agree on something that we do... Excuse me, I just had a burger. We need to agree on something that we should do...
And then
do it.
Yes. Take the initiative.
Yes, as long as we're talking, I guess, light politics as well as world problems in this video... I will go ahead and jump on this little train because I'm quite a political person.
Okay, so I'm going to go to an X file.
I am quite a political person. I do have political views, and I do that even though I did advertise. And again, that's kind of hypocritical of me. And we need to stop doing that, and I probably should, because I was saying we need to start being equal, and we need to stop putting down other people. And I guess I'm not putting down other people by supporting my own ideology, but still, that does create a divide, saying that you're this, or saying that you're that, and not accepting someone else, and completely cutting them out of
Well, that's
anything.
really what it is not accepting someone's ideologies,
which I do.
As long as they're not hurting somebody.
Precisely. And I am going to talk about the four types of main ideologies, I suppose. And I'll start. I'm gonna
from your perspective or for everybody.
From my perspective, but these are going to be broad. These are going to be broad, examples. So I feel like they should cover everything.
Okay.
I'm gonna start with the two most ineffective ones, and then I'm going to get to the. I'm gonna start with the ineffective ones because that means that I talk a little bit less about them. And the two last ones are going to be the ones that are more effective towards changing things, I suppose, on a world view towards the better. So I suppose I'm going to talk about those last because those can actually affect things, and therefore I'm going to talk about them more. But all this talk about talking is getting old, so let me begin. The four main ideologies, I suppose, are communism, which covers a wide range of socialist ideologies, including socialism itself, Leninism, Stalinism, Marxism, everything, pretty much. I suppose the social democracy would be counted under democracy more, I suppose, but that's probably the worst one at changing things on a global scale, because communism, which is, again, what Russia does right now, or at least they call themselves an emerging outlook, which means that basically they're kind of a social... They advertise themselves as a social democracy, I believe. But they really are communist because you can clearly tell... I mean, nobody wins an election like 5 times in a row. That's very clear.
Yeah, right.
That's a very clear...
Right.
problem.
And there's nothing set up there to well, your time's up.
There's nothing set... Yeah, there's no set... Your terms are done.
Yeah.
For example, Putin could just keep running until he dies.
Yeah.
Are people scared to run against somebody in that situation?
Kind of.
Oh, not
Okay,
kind
so-
of. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely,
So that's why.
but people do,
Yeah, and
then they get most of the votes, and then
then
Putin
they-
wins anyway, because...
Okay.
well,
I'm
and worse,
just
they
saying
end up
in jail.
In jail, or
And then
the people that
executed.
the people that run up against. Okay.
Yeah,
So
like,
this is a problem.
do you remember the guy's name? He ended up in
no, I
jail.
don't. I don't remember his name.
Well, he's got
but
a huge
he
following
had a huge following
for democracy
It
in Russia.
was obviously a threat and a problem to him, and
He went to jail.
and he went to jail, and
Yeah.
So that's the issue with communism.
That's the issue with communism. Well, there's 2 issues with communism, mainly. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of smaller ones, but there's 2 main ones here. The first one is corruption, and you're going to see a very, very big reoccurring thing with the word corruption when I talk about these 4 ideologies. Well, let's say this. The first one is corruption, which means that... Oh dear, well that was interesting.
See
The
that?
lights
The
went
lights
out.
were flickering.
Well, in my New Age ideology, that would say I'm so passionate that I've affected the electricity.
Yeah,
and again,
that's right, the
That's
energy,
that's
the
called
energy.
religion, and nobody and everybody needs to accept each other for whatever they believe. But we can't talk about that right now because people aren't
the
doing
next
that
one.
yet.
Yeah.
People are not doing that yet.
I think it's
Accepted as
because
long as they're not chopping off the heads of their
Yeah.
It's in the single digits
Yeah,
out there.
okay.
It's cold.
Okay. It is also pretty cold, so I suppose something could happen with our electricity. But, okay, so the first issue with communism is corruption, which means that the leaders or highly influential officials in the government do things that they want to do for their own sake. Corruption can be pretty officially boiled down to selfish people in high places of power doing things for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. So that's the very quickest problem. Now the second problem with communism is the economy itself, and the economy... That's gas.
I can smell gas.
Okay, why do our lights go out and then our gas went?
Oh, I just
Oh.
put on the oven.
Oh, you put it in the oven. Okay, cool.
Okay.
That was almost scary. Yeah. So the second problem with communism is just the very reliance of communism that its industry is its main ideal. Its main ideal is equality, which on the surface sounds good, but the thing is that communism promotes equality as a thing that should be earned and forcibly integrated into. For example, if your country got taken over by a communist, they'd say that you are now a part. Wow, that's another electric.
Yeah.
For example, if your country got taken over by a communist style government, they would say that you are now a citizen of this country, and you must do it. We say, and I know this is the thing with most people, but with most countries, and especially most overarching countries, imperialistic countries, which is funny because another thing about communism is that they say they're not imperialist, and they're not. They don't. They actually promote decolonization and the equality of people being different nations, different people. But at the same time, they go completely hypocritical against their own ideals when they take over another nation and assume that this nation must become a part of theirs.
They go hypocritical with their own countries because who ends up with all the resources and the money are at the people are the people at the very top,
even though their own ideals say that everyone should get equal points. And the thing is that when you don't have enough resources to do that, everyone gets a slice of bread for dinner. That's about it.
Do you remember? No, I was gonna say it was Ronald Reagan who said it, but I don't think it was. I think it was the Queen of England. She said, "Communism is a great concept until you run out of other people's money."
Yep, that is pretty darn boiled down about right, because communism needs resources. And that's the second biggest problem. When you don't have enough resources...
It's trying to generate its own...
I was not finished with my sentence,
Sorry.
Thank you. Communism has a problem where if you do not have enough resources, everyone does get a slice of bread for dinner. Everyone in the workers' class that is promoted as equal, and although they are equal, that doesn't mean that they're treated...
They're equally poor.
They're equally poor. Just because they're equal doesn't mean they're treated good. And therefore, it's not good. And then, therefore, the leaders of the nation who actually aren't poor as the workers that they say are the leaders of their countries, which they're not, they try to find more resources. And finding more resources involves death of other countries, death of people, death of workers in their own countries, and then the mining, the heavy industry of trying to find resources, which in turn creates pollution, in turn creating
more deaths.
More death and more debt. Yes, correct, more debt as well. Good job. No, seriously, good job, because I didn't think about that. I didn't. That wasn't sarcastic, I swear. Now, death, debt, and then pollution. And those are the two main issues with communism, even though it really promotes itself as a good ideology. And in concept, it will. And technically, in concept, all these four ideologies, or the three last ones that I'm going to speak about, are great concepts, but when they're executed, they're not good. Why don't you start me off, unless you wanted to talk about communism a little bit more. Okay, why don't you start me off with our next one while I go grab a water, since you're probably going to have some passionate
I
about
can put
this.
it on pause.
Okay,
Grab a water.
No, I want Dad to start us off while I grab a water. Why don't you start us off with our next ideology, our next bad ideology, which hurts more the economy, I think.
Okay.
Start us off with authoritarian, please, and I'll go grab...
Start us off with authoritarian?
Start us off with the second ideology.
Oh, you got your water.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Go for it.
So, authoritarian, again, is a broad range of political ideology which encompasses such things as fascism, National Socialism, or Nazism. Actually, there's a lot less, I would say, authoritarian ideologies than anything else, because they're all really united under really a couple strong ideals that aren't really quite different. Now, there's a couple more, like military juntas and fangalism. Fangalism, for quickly, is the belief of fascism combined with a very strong religious aspect. And the military juntas are just countries run by a person or a great many people which are all high-ranking people in military. But
what would you say before that one? You said the fascism mixed with
religion, fangalism. Fangalism, I believe fangalism was the ideology that Franco followed.
Oh.
I believe, unless that was the Carlists.
That reminds me, when you say that, that reminds me of, the Middle Eastern.
I believe that would be called something. I believe. No, it's similar. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that's completely wrong. That is not Islamic, but there's a certain term for those ones. I know you're looking it up in the background.
Well,
I just put in like the idea. Yeah, there's a certain.
There's a term.
There's a term for what those guys fall, and it is similar. It is pretty much a religion-based, almost authoritarian.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is religion and democracy.
No. I mean, no, it's a real hard line. What? I mean...
Come back to it.
Yeah.
Hardline jihadist?
Yeah, maybe that's what I was thinking.
There's two different terms.
Yeah.
There's jihadist, which is basically terrorism, and then there's a second one...
Be careful.
But then there's a second one, which is belief in Islam.
Those are the because
no.
Be Islamic and be very peaceful, but
very
you can
peaceful.
Be Islamic and be a jihadist.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. There are two. I am being careful.
I know.
There are two different ideologies with Islam, and I'm not going to go too far into them because that's not what my...
Yeah, that's fine. That's just what it reminded me
yes.
of, and I wasn't familiar with the term.
There are two... there is another term that I'm forgetting right now.
Yeah.
And there's two terms here. One that's a very more peaceful version of Islam, and I can't forget that one. And then there is the more authoritarian type ideologies, like the Taliban that is in power in Afghanistan at the moment.
Right.
So yeah, there's that, and there's that, and then there's the peaceful version. Unfortunately, the United States tends to go after all the versions, even the peaceful ones. But we can get to that later, as that's an ideology I'm going to be talking about pretty much right after this one, I think. So authoritarianism tends to... as Hearts Iron 4 game put it, I believe they put it as an ideology that promotes unity, strength, and unity under one leader. So there are different versions. Military juntas, which means that one person or a group of people that are all high-ranking, like generals and things, are in charge of the nation. Fangalism, or I'm not sure. It might not actually be. I might have been saying it wrong. I believe.
I'm not familiar with
I believe it's spelled Falangism.
Phalangism has a disputed relationship with fascism, as some historians consider the Falang to be a fascist movement based on its fascist leanings in the early years, while others focus on its transformation into an authoritarian conservative movement in Francoist Spain.
That would be Francoist Spain, then.
Francoist Spain.
Which is named for... I'm sorry, I'm talking with my mouth full of multivitamins. Named for Francisco Franco, the military general who revolted against the unstable Third Republic of Spain during the times of World War II. He had support from Mussolini and Hitler, actually, and that's mostly how he came to power.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's Phalangism. That's more based off religion. I don't know why the article didn't refer to that, but Phalangism is technically Francoism, and it is heavily based off authoritarianism and religion. And then there's the more hardline ones, which is basically just authoritarianism can be basically boiled down to fascism, which then has all of its weird little roots. I suppose you could technically call monarchism authoritarian as well, because it is technically one person divided under a bunch of different leaders.
She should join in.
I
You have
jump in
been.
every now and then. This is his.
Okay, so fascism basically boils down to unity under one leader and then strength. Now, here's the thing: strength doesn't mean like, hey, our country's really strong. Strength basically means military strength and economic strength. Do you know what military strength and economic strength means? Death, conquering, and pollution, once again. Unfortunately. Now again, fascism actually, although its actual ideology, its actual ideals, for once, their ideals actually don't sound good when you put them on paper. Mm-hmm. Although if you are a desperate person in debt and then you see this thing, oh wow, I mean, this could work, which is basically what the Weimar Republic said. Yeah. Go look that up. I'm not going to go into a whole thing explaining the Weimar Republic, because that goes back to World War I and then Wilson and then all that. So,
yeah. I think we're at capitalism, and you're going to say the same thing, because capitalism produces product so much that it needs
more resources, and therefore it needs more pollution.
And therefore,
also,
and so doesn't seem,
although capitalism does promote the fact that if you do something, we will give you something. And therefore, which is kind of similar to communism, except communism's version of that is, if you do something for us, as in mine in a working place and create pollution, we'll give you a loaf of bread. Capitalism is, if you go green and start using electric scooters, or that's just an example, because that's something that we're doing.
No,
if you go green and start using electric cars, I suppose, so you do better, we can give you money. Which we haven't started doing that yet, but it's something that's possible.
But hold on. Because I want to...
Yes. Go ahead, because you know actually more about capitalism. I focus on more extremist ideologies, and just... It doesn't mean that I'm one of them, although I am kind of more monarchist, but I am also liberal monarchist, so...
Okay, well, that's good, because I'm gonna have to correct you a little bit.
Yes, go ahead, because you're more focused on democratic ideologies as you're libertarian, so go ahead and you lead
this. The capitalist ideology says it doesn't matter...
Or the democratic ideology, by the way. Democracy, which envelops most of capitalism, as with the notable exceptions of social democracy and things like that, which don't normally focus on money. Democracy is an ideology focused on equality once more and the will of the people to change the nation, which is, again, good, except for the fact that, again, just like communism, it gets really corrupt really fast, because whoever the people put in charge of the nation doesn't mean that person is going to be good to the people who elected that person.
Yeah,
it gets corrupt really easily. And I did want to say something about authoritarianism as well. Authoritarianism can be less corrupt than a lot of them. It just really depends on the leader, because if the leader is good, then that leader can stay the leader of that nation for a long time and therefore continue leading the nation effectively. But unfortunately with authoritarianism, whoever leads the nation is more often than not a dictator, and therefore creates war and things like World War II. But back to capitalism. The democracy, which is our next subject, the one that we were just talking about, really focuses on unity, the will of the people, but it's also very corrupt. And you are focusing on a very large part of democracy and its ideals, which is capitalism itself. And you'll go talk about that. But I did want to talk about the different subclasses here real quick.
Well, can I just, because you got away, I just wanted to
Go ahead and talk about capitalism, and then I'll talk about
I just wanted to correct
Go ahead.
something
Yes,
really
go ahead.
quick,
Go ahead.
which was...
Sure, I apologize, yes.
Okay, so, you said, okay, so communism is the theory that you go to work and we will take care of your need, i.e., here's a loaf of bread.
Yes.
Okay, the idea of capitalism is you go out, you make that for yourself, and there's no limit to, i.e., how many loaves of bread you can acquire, or yes,
it's kind of an unbridled.
So I just wanted because the government really should have nothing to do with the capitalist ideology. In fact, they should get out of the way of that.
But the unfortunate part is that most democratic governments, and a lot of other governments too, but this tends to happen more in democratic governments, the government does try to regulate the capitalist system, which kind of fuels the fire for communist systems, because communist systems see directly into that,
very smart,
and go and say, well, this is horrible, that's trash.
Right.
But the thing is that communist systems focus on only that. They say that the democracy is bad because the government the government regulates the economy too much, which is true. It's just that they're also not focusing on the good parts of democracy, which happen to have a lot more good parts than communism.
Well, I mean, if today, for example, in America, there's a lot of people, myself included, that feel like you're regulated to a point where you can't, you can barely operate.
Yeah.
Type of thing. I mean, that's a little exaggerant, but there's so many, and this is an issue that they create themselves, because if they would have just been out of the commerce side and not started subsidizing farmers and then oil companies, then they wouldn't have had to start to
that
get
funds the government, but that funds the government, and therefore the government continues, and that's the only way they think of having the government continue is by money, money, money. And unfortunately, that creates pollution as well. That creates resource use and unfortunate wars and things over resources.
Yes.
And forcing... Also, another thing about democracy...
But it will bring me back to what I originally said to start this off, which is it's still the best system that we have in place right now to help solve some of those problems.
Yes, because the thing is about capitalism... unfortunately, the thing about capitalism that's not with the other ideologies is the fact that capitalism also attempts to solve the problems it creates.
Well, which means that or if there's just a problem, period. If you have a solution to a problem, then it
capitalism kind of more listens. Because you don't... Capitalism listens to the problem that you have, and normally, if your government's not corrupt, which a lot of them accidentally tend to be, because you can't really escape corruptness no matter what ideology you are in.
Right.
If it's not, capitalism does listen to the problem, and I would say more often than not, attempt to create a solution, because in communist and authoritarian ideologies, you don't have power to say, I have a problem.
Yeah. Well, and like I said at the beginning, then yes, the oil companies are actually trying to shift over to
I don't know anything about that, so I can't...
They are, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to speak for every oil company or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know about that, so I'm not going to, like...
There is, though. I mean, I think Exxon's one of them. They're trying to shift their over, because I think that they see that the
winds of change are coming, and that people dislike them.
Well, yeah, and they can't, and they know it's not sustainable. So, you have to boil it down to, if I'm a business owner,
yes,
and I see that, not only is it not popular to be, continuing to get oil out of the ground, but it's also it's not a long-term, solution for us anymore. Yeah, you better bet, you need to start steering the company in another direction.
Now, I'll talk about some problems, but first I'm going to talk about the subclasses of democracy, which is our third ideology, which the main ideal of democracy quite normally is capitalism and equality of the people. So democracy, like I said, will of the people, everything else. It has a bunch of subclasses that can be very, very interesting. Because democracy has so many subclasses that are technically part of any other ideology we talked about, but are still democratic. For example, social democracy could fit into communism or democracy because it's basically communism and democracy. And that sounds really good at first basis because that means that you have equality of the people and union of the people, but then again, it also combines both of the problems of communism and democracy, and therefore it gets bad. Now, right-wing populism is also bad because, again, that's authoritarianism and democracy, which really does not work. And then there's libertarianism, there's green parties, and I will talk about green parties in a second where we get to non-aligned, which is going to be our next ideology, because that encompasses all the rest. But there are green parties, there's democracy, as in, there's the ideology of democracy, which has its own subclass of democratic. Democracy has its own subclass called democratic. So there are two differences between the overarching democracy and then the smaller subclass called democratic. Because then there's also democratic, republican, libertarian, social democrat, populist, right-wing populist, left-wing.
Well,
there's a lot of them, okay?
There's a lot of them.
There
is, and you can't really get into them all. I mean,
you can't get into them all, but they all have their own problems. But the main overarching problems, I'd say, are the fact that democracy doesn't have an expansionist view, but it does have an interventionist view, which means that its military gets really large, and they try to bully other nations into becoming democratic, sort of like how authoritarian does the same. And whatever ideology that specific democratic government does not agree with, they will probably attempt to do everything in their power to change whatever ideology they don't like, which can create war, which can create inept resources, which can create need for resources, which creates pollution. So does military, because democracy relies heavily on military as well, just like authoritarianism, and that creates more need for resources, more death, more this, more that, and pollution. Pollution happens, but then, again, like you said, democracy, with its ideal, one of its main ideals being capitalism, it tries to fix, and sometimes, kind of 50-50, it will fix the problems it creates, and 50% of the time it doesn't, and that's what you call corruption. Again, the same thing that happens during communism and authoritarianism, where the leader, or whoever's, or higher-up officials in a government, or the leader of that government, starts lining their own pockets with whatever they want. It's not just money or whatever, but it starts doing whatever they want for selfish reasons.
And it happens in our system too now.
It happens in every system, but
it happens in every system.
It's starting to happen a lot more in democracy, which is unfortunate because that goes against the very ideals of democracy, the will of the people.
Right. That's exactly right. That's why we shouldn't have lobbyists, and in Washington D.C. there shouldn't be lobbyists. There shouldn't be subsidies. That's
which is an opinion, but probably a very educated one, or not very educated, because I suppose none of us have like a PhD in politics or whatever you call that.
But it's common sense.
But it is. Common sense must count for something.
Yeah. And usually you'll find where common sense isn't being used, then there's dollar bills
being paid, and then that starts becoming authoritarianism, which is not good. Right. But we can get to that at some point other time. The fourth ideology and final ideology we're getting to is what covers everything else, which is a lot. Because there are a lot of them that fit under authoritarianism, a lot of them that fit under communism, a lot of ideologies that fit under democratic. But the fourth ideology we're talking about is non-aligned. This covers other ideologies that can be leaning towards one of the three others, but are more necessarily their own thing than something else. So
I don't think that you can really put a pin in that. My question is what do you have ideas on how these things get solved?
Well,
because the main thing is you're saying we need to unify as a global community.
Yes. Let's talk about non-aligned, because non-aligned can fix a lot of these problems. Certain parties within non-aligned have ideals to these problems that could fix these problems, but the thing is that non-aligned ideologies are normally smaller parties who are looked down upon for being smaller.
Well, no one likes them because you're not completely siding with us, you're not completely siding with them,
and therefore you drop in popularity, and therefore you never get in power.
It's the same, I mean, the closest you're getting to that is libertarianism, and it's still the same issue.
And libertarianism can be pretty much boiled down to a non-aligned / capitalist ideology,
yes,
or democracy non-aligned. So I would say libertarian fits pretty much in democracy, but it does have hints of non-aligned that I do enjoy. So non-aligned covers all the rest that we didn't fit in the other three ideologies. These would cover such things such as monarchism, which, although people say that monarchism is an authoritarian ideology, and for the most part it is, but you can't really compare like nominalism, you can't really compare monarchism, which is technically kind of what I am. You can't really compare monarchist to fascism. You can't really do that because although monarchism is a people united under one leader, sort of like fascism, the thing is, monarchism tends to unite the people under something that's a little bit less corrupt and more royal, which can sometimes create issues in class. But if it's done right, then I believe that it could probably work, because people... I would promote, myself personally, I would promote some sort of system that is kind of like monarchism and also Switzerland's democracy. Do you know how Switzerland's democracy works?
Yeah, I think I have a pretty good idea.
It's a big old council.
Uh-huh.
It's a big old council of democratically elected officials where they all get together and work. And I feel like if you had a king that was a figurehead of the people and could really unite the people while also having a democratically elected council that had power and decisions, I feel like that would work a lot, like a democratic monarchism, a liberal monarchism. But that's a different thing.
I gotta say, I think you're right though. I from what I've seen from Switzerland, if it could be implemented on
in other nations.
Well, if it could just take here, for example, if it could be implemented on a large scale here, and I don't know if it can be because there's certain, but
quite technically, we do have something similar, but it's too big is the problem here. Yeah. Because we have Switzerland's we have Switzerland's council thing, but like ×3, because we got the Senate, the House, the this, the that, and those are all technically what Switzerland does. But then again, it's not just one council deciding things. This council has to decide things that this council has to work on, and then this council has to decide things, and then that council can repeat and decide another thing. And it kind of repeats before it goes to the president, who can either deny the bill or to accept it, and if they deny it, then they have to do the whole process again, and it gets all convoluted and horrible.
But again, that's pretty much the same system we have.
I was talking about our system.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying Switzerland.
No, Switzerland's fine.
Gotcha.
No, Switzerland's got one council, so it goes to it goes
you
all
were
around.
saying
it
our
goes
system
all around.
is going around.
And it goes around. It beats around the bush, and then it beats around the bush again.
Yes,
and finally goes into it.
And then it's loaded with a bunch of what they call pork, because it's a bunch of things that lobbyists want that are benefiting senators that they're putting in bills that have nothing to do with anything.
If anyone does not know what he means by pork, it means the fine print.
All the extra added garbage.
Extra stuff that basically means, okay, so you're going to be equal and we're going to take $1 off your taxes. by the way, the fine print says we're going to add $2 to your taxes.
Yeah.
It basically means that. But I believe Switzerland only has really one council where everything goes around a thing. Everyone agrees on something, and that's passed.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple. I like Switzerland's ideology. But that's democratic. Another big part of non-aligned is the Green parties, which is one of the best parties here because it's one of the best. Yeah, we have a Green here. Can you lead what Green's ideology? Can you lead what Green's ideals are while I grab another water because this one is empty?
I just gave you mine, but okay.
No, it's fine. I want you to have yours, and I want you to lead. You haven't had pretty much any say right now.
Start another video file.
Start another video file. Yes.
Okay, I'll add it all together. They're not going to attack.
So, Green Party is obviously about the environment and climate and what we're going to do about it. You know, like what you had earlier said about planting more trees. We need to make the air that we breathe better. We need to utilize better utilities, like we need to go wind and solar panels, wind turbines, solar panels. We need to utilize our, using water, to generate the power from water. We need to really utilize what we already have, what Mother Earth has already given to us. And it's going to be healthier for everybody, forever and ever. Amen. What I'm saying is we need the bees to create the pollen, to create the vegetables and the fruits that we eat. If we do not have enough bees, plentiful bees, we do not have enough trees to breathe oxygen. We're not going to live without trees. Yes, we have to take care of pesticides from the farms and the runoff into the water that we drink, and we need to take care of the excessive pollution and heat that we're causing. The ice is breaking off of the permafrost, the perma ice. The permanent ice is not. It needs to. We need to step in and make it better. We need for our generations to come, because if we don't, we're going to be not, as human beings and earthlings are going to be, instead of drinking water from a plastic bottle, we will be trying to breathe in a can of air, because the air is toxic and the water is toxic and the food has too much pesticides. We need to take care of this. This is Green Party.
Which is great. So yes, I'd like to say two things. So the very first,
if the water melts, our beaches, our
land trains.
Yes, the water will come inward.
And we really don't have any resources.
And we will not have the pristine beaches that we've had before. The water will be coming in. There will be more weather stuff happening.
Basically, we will cause
the spinning of the
our
earth
own destruction.
is natural, but we are creating lots more problems. Even minute as as it may sound, it's not as minute as.
Yes. Okay. So Green, I did want to say two things, because I did start my sentence. I don't want to cut you off though.
It was more than a sentence. I know.
Yeah, but no, that's good. I wanted you to start us off like that. That's incredible. So yes, Green Party is probably one of the best for the fact that we want our world the problems gone, because Green Party focuses on fixing world problems more than anything else. It's also very democratically aligned, which means that you get to elect officials and everything. So it's a really good mix of things. I wouldn't say there's no problems, because again, as it is aligned towards democracy, that means corruption and everything still exists. But Green Party's ideals are more geared towards the survival of the human race, which really is a lot better than, like, preserving their own ideology or unifying their country, or it's the preservation of the earth and everything else. If nobody really understands what you were talking about there, which I feel like you said it really well, so I feel like they should. But if people don't get it, has anyone seen the Lorax movie?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
some of it was
weird.
The basic idea of it. Yes.
But the basic idea of the Lorax is that basically a capitalist guy, a big business capitalist guy, goes to forest and he meets all these animals who say we're all, sentient and please, let us live. And this capitalist guy goes, okay, well, I'm going to stay here for a while because you guys are all great. But then he cuts down one tree and he goes, well, I'm going to sell this. And everybody loves it. So he cuts down more trees and more trees and more trees, and then that creates a big old capitalist system and a big old monopoly. And monopolies are a big problem, but it's not really what I'm trying to get on about. So he creates a big monopoly, but then he cuts down so many trees because of his capitalist system that pretty much the world begins to die. Mm-hmm. And everyone's really locked into this one little city where air is pretty much artificially produced,
modified,
and then it's sold by this little short dude with a bowl cut.
Who doesn't matter what they look like.
I know. I wanna make the comedy short dude with a bowl cut though. So yeah, so air ends up being pretty much artificially produced and then sold to people like air in a can, which really gets bad. But then this kid finds a seed, and then this kid eventually says that we can regrow the planet if we keep spreading these seeds, and he basically unites the entire city under pretty much a democratically aligned Green Party, which is incredible. And it really does speak to what the Green Party stands for. Let it grow, let's do some plants, and let's make the world a better place. And let's regrow the earth.
I like that.
So that is pretty much a good example of a Green Party taking place. The kid and his friends starting this whole, planting a tree, getting the big business monopoly out of the way, making sure that everything is good again. So that's technically what a Green Party really stands for. But again, there are problems with the Green Party because it's democratically aligned, so it becomes corrupted eventually.
You just said getting big business. What did you say? Getting
in the Lorax specifically, the kid gets the monopoly out of the way, but since it's still democratically aligned, monopolies can form. It's just that Green Parties try to...
Well, look, there's nothing good with monopolies. I'm not trying to stick up for monopolies.
Yes, clearly, because monopolies cause a lot of problems to the environment as they're so big and they
create a lot of problems to our social structure.
Yes, because they buy out everybody's smaller businesses and create loss of jobs.
Yes. But I think that phrase and then they create,
and then they create more factories, and then they create more pollution, and again, that's bad. So monopolies are bad.
I think that phrase like right there, though, is very interesting because, well, first I just want to put some food for thought out there. And it's not that I disagree with anything that anybody said.
Good.
I don't disagree with anything.
That's good. That's being a member of the human community.
Yeah, but some food for thought, okay? And the first thing is that you have to accept the fact that there is a large portion of global warming propaganda going on because it helps people get into certain political positions.
There is, because there are two parts of global warmings. There are two parts of the global warming
discussion. There's what's real and what has been corrupted.
Yes, again, corruption is a big problem. there's two parts of it, which is one, like you said, the people saying that we need to create a change because we are killing the species and this is not good.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the people who say, look at me, fellow kids, I am with you. So get me in a high political power so I can create more monopolies and line my pockets.
Well, and that's you're right.
And that's
with that,
unfortunate.
but that's really just the tip of the iceberg because
yes, but it's a generalization.
It is a generalization
to explain in a very general way, so that we don't get too
the government
in depth on it.
In general. I mean, yes, more one party than the other, but they use that as a fear tactic to, we've got to raise taxes and
all do better, so get me in power.
Yes, and so there are some
which tends to sound like an authoritarian government, but I'm not going to say anything like that because I don't want to shut anybody down.
There's certain environmental groups that actually have become kind of climate terrorists, if you will.
Yes,
and
some people stand for something and then absolutely do the opposite of what they stand for.
A kind of thing, yeah. But just food for thought. So I just want to put some food for thought out there.
Yes.
That the first point, yes, is that a lot of this global warming is mixed with a lot of propaganda and, again, intended to line people's pockets, so it's hard to...
But it does help, because a lot of people get aware because of it. Correct.
Unless you actually visited, you don't know either.
Let's try and not go off that, because we are still trying to talk about non-aligned parties, but I did want... like the Green Party here, and to prove what you were saying earlier... You were wrong about one thing. Al Gore did not say Florida would be underwater in 10 years. He said in 2009 that the North Pole will be ice-free in the summer by 2013. He said the North Pole would be ice-free in 4 years, which was drastic, but probably a pretty good guess at that point.
Have you looked at the maps? Have you seen how much ice is up there at the North Pole?
In 4 years...
Have you?
In 4 years, the ice really has drained. It doesn't mean that it's gone, but he did make a good guess, and I think it did disappear a lot, but it hasn't done all of it. So you are.
I mean, even Nostradamus has made predictions, and they're not exactly 100% true.
Of course.
So we can all predict, every minute of every day.
That's right, and it doesn't have to be correct. And
right, I know, but he was probably pointing out that if we continue to do what they were doing at that moment in time, then that would happen. But maybe, just maybe, somebody said something to somebody's company and said, we need to slow this down.
And we did.
Or fix it.
So that's
good. Did slow it down. So maybe, just maybe,
we
it
are
did
on the
help
path.
For a reason.
I believe.
Sorry, I didn't think we were recording.
No, we definitely are still.
Okay, sorry.
I believe, like I said earlier, that the world's on a tipping point. On one edge of this knife's edge here that we're on, we can become much better of a society and permanently turn around, and we will start becoming much better, a much more equal society with much less corruption and a lot healthier. On the other thing is war and destruction, but I think if we just start working at it, we really can. Things can go wrong. Things will go wrong if we're not
you have to.
careful.
You can't live in a rosebud world.
You can't live in night.
No. Of course not. But I'm just, my whole point was, hey, there's a balance between the two. Yes, do we have a garbage island, and are we producing, too much? Yes, we are. But also keep in mind, man, the ocean is a large space.
And it's getting larger, which is not good.
Well, but...
The ocean is getting larger? A little bit. The
because of the ice.
Are different, and yeah.
Well,
all right. Well, hey, I gotta do some stuff. That was
a good discussion. Good discussion.
It was good talk, honey.
Oh, yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Stop it now.
Okay. the problems with non-aligned are pretty much similar to the problems with democracy. Corruption and the very fact that its ideals can sometimes go against it, and that its ideals can sometimes be forced upon other nations, which can cause destruction. The better part to these problems here is that with Green parties specifically, which are unfortunately small due to the fact that they exist as a separate party that aren't aligned to a single
I don't think
other.
It's small.
Well, it's not as small as any of the others. I think it's the third largest in the United States. But the unfortunate part of being the third largest in the United States is that's because like 48% of the United States is Democratic, 48% is Republican, then like 2% would be like Green, and then there's other parties that are fairly large, but they're fairly large with a fairly large following, except the... Well, I was just giving an estimate, you know,
I'm just learning.
Okay. Those are the problems with non-aligned. They're pretty much the same as democracy. But I think non-aligned, if we mix them up really well and we created something better, something new that really works as a unification of almost all the ideologies and really tries to make all the good parts work. And you can't make all the good parts work without including some of the bad. I understand that. But if we really tried to make every voice heard, every ideology's good parts attempt to be integrated without making too much of a problem, especially relying on Green parties, because Green parties really do know what's going on. I think if we rely on some Green parties...
They know what's going on.
And they want to do something about it.
Everybody knows what their own party knows,
yes,
okay?
I would be pretty good.
Not that they really know what's going on. They just know what's going on. These guys know what's going on over here. And so we just
and they want to do something about it. I would say that we should combine something around the terms of a green liberal monarchist.
Ah, well, interesting.
That would probably be my end statement, is that's probably one of the best ideologies you could do, which doesn't even exist yet. So somebody make that a thing.
Everything comes with pros and cons.
Everything comes with pros and cons,
problems.
but Green parties right now are probably the best way to go. Because they have probably the best outlook with probably the least amount of negatives, I would say.
Everything costs money, though. So.
Everything costs money. Or at least in a capitalist society it does.
Yeah, in every
But then
society,
again, capitalism is probably the best
their...
choice. Anyways, thank you, peace, love, bye. It does not. So, I am recording. No, continue, it's alright. This has been a free speech video. This has been a free speech video, so go ahead if you want to continue. Alright, well thank you for watching. If you managed to make it through that hour and a half long video, some things I quickly wanted to point out were that during the end pieces there, you might notice a lot of cuts and shreds and chops. That's mainly due to the fact that a bunch of, shall we say, not completely true theories were brought up. I fact-checked them after the case, and a lot of them had some partial truths to them, as many theories do. Nothing is completely false. But I had to cut a lot of those pieces out because it was too, in the lightest meaning of the word possible, it was too kind of convoluted to include, because even in those tiny little tidbits and footnotes that it kept showing up, I couldn't really explain really well at all of the... Yeah, and it got really late and I got really tired, so I kind of skipped out and cut a bunch of the pieces out. Unfortunately, that also meant that we cut a bunch of the pieces out, including some of our Green Party member, Taurus. We cut a couple of her pieces out on, unfortunately, because I had to do that because they came in very close proximity to the pieces with the kind of controversial theories. So yeah, unfortunately we missed out on some stuff concerning polar bears and turtles and a bunch of sad stuff like that. So we missed out on that, and but it was all for the best. Trust me on that. I noticed how my ending was so rushed, and therefore I wanted to redo it. I've been editing this thing for a solid couple of hours now, which is why I don't edit any of my other videos, but I assume that after like a month of not getting anything, you guys would probably want something nice and large and, you know, as a big return. In fact, I actually intended this to be my return to be Shuga and Taurus reacting to Megalovania remixes, which is a song from a game, for anyone that doesn't know, but that's besides the point. That was what I intended it to be, and that's still gonna happen. It's just that that political thing spontaneously happened, and it was really cool. It was a really good discussion. It took a lot of editing, and it took a lot of energy out of me, but I realized at the end that my ending was very rushed, kind of because I could feel another surge of political talk coming on from Shuga, and I did want to end the video right around there, so I could tell that he was getting ready to go into another one, and I really wasn't up to it at that point. I was ready to get up myself, so I decided to cut it a little bit short there, and therefore I didn't get to do my official outro, so I wanted to do that really quick and now, and so thank you for watching. I'm going to be much more active very soon after the Megalovania remix video gets uploaded, because then I'll have all of that, and then I'll be able to move over to my new computer, which has a lot of cool stuff, and it's going to be so much better, guys. That's what's been taking all this time, just me moving over to my new computer, but I will become way more active again. I've been thinking about making another new channel that would be similar to this one, just a little bit more, I don't know, it'd be a long talk, so I'm not going to get into that one, but I will be a lot more active, I promise, really soon. I apologize for all my inactivity, but with that, I'd like to officially say my outro that wasn't all rushed and quick, and if you'd like to say it with me, Taurus, who happens to be up as late as I am, even though we should probably both go into our rooms and fall asleep. Thank you everyone for watching. This has been a Diamond Kitty Game video, and we will see you all
In the next
one. Goodbye. Peace, love, happiness. You are who you are, be who you are, and be equal. You do you. You do you, and don't let anyone tell you not to.